let's jump right into it. There's been a lot of talk around the bulletproof buyer and why that's so important. And we're all seeing it in the market right now. The challenges that we're having around our buyers getting their offers accepted. And there's a number of components that go into this. And we're going to hit on it today, but a lot of it is the psychology around it. And it's emotionally preparing and strategically preparing your borrowers and your partners. And so the way we're going to hit on this, because really, we can take a couple fronts. We can take, how do you present to your agents? How do you present to your clients? But we wanted to get through the whole concept of the bulletproof buyer and the key points in that. And so we're going to go kind of at a really quick pace, just so we make sure we can give you guys that feel of it. And then we'll turn back around and we'll kind of dig into each one of those. We'll explain kind of our key focus around it, and then we'll open it up some questions from you guys on it. But a lot of content to get through here today, and we want to leave you guys with something tactical and tangible that you can take out to the market with your clients and your agents. So Danny, I'll kick it over to you real quick to set the stage a little bit further, and then let's jump right into it.
Yeah, team. So, as Tribe coaches in this Tribe community, we're really committed to bringing you both vitamins for your business, right? Something that's going to allow you to get bigger, stronger, faster, but also painkillers, right? We need to be able to deploy both for you and for your referral partners and for your buyers. This bulletproof buyer tactic is absolutely a painkiller. And what we found is that, bringing painkillers to your referral partners in particular is what allows you to really anchor in with them deeply. There's 5 components to the bulletproof buyer strategy. What I want to share is that you do not absolutely need to execute all 5 in order to be successful with the strategy. Although the more of the components that you do execute, the more likely you are to be bringing value to your referral partners and clients, the more likely you are to get their offer accepted, to convert that lead and have them be extremely loyal to you. But you may see, as we're going through the 5 components, that there's something that either structurally, technologically, or operationally, you just don't have the resources in your business today to execute it. Don't worry, right? You can build into it the awareness, knowledge is potential power. So you can bring that and understand how you might build it in, but take what you can from this that can be implemented literally today. We're going to share some examples of how people have learned about the strategy, picked up the phone within 15 minutes of hearing about it, and have gotten additional referrals in that moment. It is that powerful of a strategy. So it's the closest thing to a silver bullet for the current market that we're in that I've seen in a long, long time. So with that said, again, we're going to go touch on the how and why of each of the 5. As we're going through, please in the chat, put questions that are coming up for you. When we get through the initial pass, we're going to then revisit each and unpack it more thoroughly. And your questions in the chat will then drive that conversation. We want this to be interactive from the standpoint of your feedback to us in the chat can then influence how we kind of address this once Ryan goes through the 5 pillars of the bulletproof buyer strategy. So with that, Ryan, you want to just kick it off and share with the group and let's see what we got going.
Yeah, we'll get rolling. All right, everyone. So I'm going to try and get through this. This probably is an hour-long presentation. I'm going to kind of high level it, and then feel free to put questions in the Q&A, and then we'll have some questions at the end. But let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to share with sound and video. I need to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the waiting room as well. So we're going to do a lot of fun stuff here today. Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to keep it in this view just so I can share some of the other things. So the version we're going to be going over here today is the version that you would give to your realtor partners. We also have versions for clients that you would share with your clients, but this is going to be how to put this out into the real estate community. We'll also talk about some ways at the end on how to do that as well. We're doing an event here today. We have a bunch of agents coming in. We're live streaming it. And so I think this is something that every mortgage professional should be doing, especially if you're a Tribe member. You want to make sure you take this and run with it. So let's go ahead and get started here. Bulletproof buyer, increase the odds of successful home purchase. Kind of what we're trying to do. Buyers are tired, agents are tired. We all understand it. We live it every day. We know that it's frustrating. We know that not getting offers accepted is a massive emotional roller coaster. And so when frustration sets in with our clients, they usually give up, right? Or they stop, or they rent, or the emotion kind of overcomes logic. And we need to make sure that we have answers for them and we can show them results. So, because until now we've just been following the same routine, hoping to get yesterday's results in a market that has changed. So what we want to do today is not just talk about how challenging the market is, but actual strategies to be able to ensure that people are overcoming these things. Right? We can get our offers accepted at a higher level. We can actually create excitement from buyers as opposed to fear and frustration and anxiety. So again, buyers are scared, right? They feel that the market's moving too fast. They feel like we're pushing them out of their comfort zone. We've heard it from multiple people. I've heard it from some of my team members. I've heard it from some of my friends. They're just saying, look, every time we talk to a real estate agent, we talk to a lender, it just feels like we have to move so fast. We have to buy something over our asking price. We're not really comfortable with it. And, we're just a little bit gun shy. And we feel like we're being pressured into something. I remember my sister telling me specifically, like, how do they expect us to see a home and make a decision on it in one day? I'm like, well, you have to. It's just kind of the market we're in. But the key is doing the legwork up front. So there's a lot of areas where people feel uncertain or insecure. One is the data, right? They believe that it's kind of like 2007. The market may crash. Their uncle's telling them not to buy. It's not a good time. It's a bubble. They don't have the data, right? So they're relying on feelings, right? This kind of feels like 2007, or we're going to wait because there's some sort of cyclical market that's supposed to happen. They just kind of hear sound bites and they read headlines. They don't actually dive into the data. So that's what we're going to be able to show them. And then we want to make sure we come up with a plan. We help them psychologically through the challenges that they're having, and then show them how they can actually compete. So we're going to walk through all those things today. So the solution here is bulletproofing your buyer, right? Making sure that you can get your buyer into a position where they have the highest probability of getting an offer accepted through these 5 different pillars. So first thing is just creating a comprehensive upfront market analysis. Right? Your clients have to have a much better understanding of the housing market as a whole, and then really understand why the housing market's doing what it's doing. It's problematic because people don't know why it's so manic right now. Like, why is the real estate market doing this? And it feels like it's happening to them and they don't have any agency over it. So we want to make sure that we help them with the, analyzing the market as a whole. Next is addressing the psychology of the buyer situation. This is my favorite thing to tell real estate agents is, if you have a client who's pre-approved by an average loan officer, that means they know what they can do. But an above average loan officer or a really great mortgage professional will actually help your client understand why they should actually do it. So that's something that we will address. Next is the appraisal gap strategy. We all feel it, right? Purchase price is X, but appraisal comes in at X minus 5, 10, 15, 20%. So not only do we have to find a way to overcome that logistically, we have to help the client understand that psychologically before it actually happens, right? We have to set expectations. That way we can manage the outcome. Next is fully underwritten approvals. It's basically common stakes for the market as it is today. You shouldn't have loan contingencies. You should be able to compete with a cash offer. You should do the heavy lifting up front, which takes communication between the agent and the lender. It takes expectation setting, and it takes a little bit of heavy lifting and time up front to invest in a more positive outcome. And the last is going to be submitting all cash offers, which is a financing company that we work closely with, where we can help them buy their new home all cash, and then they have the time to sell their departing residence, and we'll get into that as well. So first, we're going to talk about the comprehensive upfront market analysis. Again, clients need to know why the housing market is doing what it's doing, and not just speculating off of feeling or emotion. So the year-over-year change in housing inventory, there is a massive, as I'm sure we're all aware, there's a massive supply problem in the country today. And it's easy to see why, right? There's been plenty of times in the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, and obviously most of the 2000s, where builders were making 2 million homes a year. And there was times when it dipped. What happened is after the Great Recession, builders got clobbered. And the challenge is they haven't gotten us back to where we need to be in terms of new housing starts. So for almost 20 years, we've been slowly coming up, but we're barely scratching the surface literally we're at, almost 500,000 homes compared to 2 million. And then, oops, COVID hit here, right? So that dropped us down a little bit, and then they're trying again. But there's still a challenge because it's hard to build a home that is affordable, right? Lumber prices are up, red tape and distribution is up. It's just builders are having a challenging time putting things in the ground. So right now they're just laying slabs and kind of waiting. That's not going to help long term. So this is something where when people say, I can't understand why this is happening, it's because there's a massive supply problem, and that's not actually going to change anytime soon unless builders really get back up to the levels of building 1.5 to 2 million houses per year consistently for about 5 to 10 years. And then we're going to go through some of these slides here, which are all really data slides that help people understand the why behind the market even more. So as we can see here, plenty of years where single family housing units were completed were above kind of the average, right? There's only a few years in the last 40 years where it was really below the average line. And then we saw the massive run up here. So we had 4 consecutive years of record setting numbers of units year after year, which really created an oversupply, right? So when people say it felt like 2007, well, 2007 was great because there was a high level of demand for housing. It was the in vogue thing. Same thing it is today. So like the feeling is the same. There's a mania about real estate. We felt it in 2005, 2006. We're feeling it again now. Challenge is we were we had an oversupply. Now we have a massive undersupply. We're 13 straight years below the 50-year average. And we haven't even come up to it yet. And 2021 is likely not going to get us there either.
Hey, Ryan, let me add something on this. It's been pretty interesting. So travel is open back up. I'm, every week I'm on 1 or 2 planes, and the conversation always comes up. What do you do? And we start talking when we talk about, financing and advising people around purchasing homes and what that looks like. And it is inevitable that every single time the conversation goes to, well, we're in that, same position we were in back in 2007, 2008. It's in every time. It's funny now that I will tee it up and just wait for that to come. And then I'm taking information here from this deck right here and just having the conversation and watching that evolution as you start educating them, for them being like, well, there is still opportunity right now. Then this is still a good time. And it's just, we're so uneducated as a society around the true data behind it. So as you guys are kind of listening and we're going through it, what you need to pull away from this is where we need to take and educate our clients so they make informed decisions. They make strategic decisions, as opposed to that emotional feeling that we feel like because the media or because of what happened historically, it's going to happen again. The data does not support that at all.
Yeah, well said. So more data to analyze to help you understand that is the year-over-year change in housing inventory. So, for a long time, we were kind of in that, 2 million homes, available. We actually popped up in 2007. Like I said, we were oversupplied. We jumped up to 3.5. And then we've been falling. And now we, have literally, I think just like 1.03 million homes for sale in current state, which is the lowest it's ever been, since the National Association of Realtors has even been tracking this category. So again, supply problem, and demand is going to be there for quite a long time based on demographics, which we'll get to here in a second. Next is going to be supply of homes for sale nationally are down 71% since 2007. So at the peak, we had 3.7 million homes for sale, and current, I think this was a month or so ago, 1.07. I think it's down even farther now. So we have, 330 million people in the United States. Of that, I believe there's about 1.8 million households. 180 million households. And that means that there's 1 home for every 18 families. So when you hear that there's, 20 offers on a house, shouldn't be surprising to anybody, right? I mean, that just number of people, number of homes, right? It should be really clear. If someone says, God, I can't believe it, why are there so many offers? It's just demographics, right? This number of homes that were active, number of homes that are active today. And then you get into kind of year-over-year change in housing inventory. So every single market, it's so funny. Every time I talk to someone from a different state, they go, oh man, our market is crazy. It's like, really? Our market's just normal. It's easy. It's like, no, every market is challenged. You're seeing people anywhere from 40 to 60% down in terms of housing inventory just from last year alone. And the United States as a whole is 52%. Now, if you're in Hawaii or New York, it's not as bad, right? But still not a positive number. And then you get into months of inventory, which has actually dropped below in 2021. We're now down to 1.3 months of inventory. So again, it feels like 2006, 2007 because of the demand for housing. The problem is we had 9.6 months. So in 2006, 2007, interest rates were 100% higher than they are today. We're at 3, they were at 6 during this time. And we still had massive demand, but we had an oversupply of inventory that stayed on the market for 9.6 months. Now, since 2017, it's been dropping, and now we're at an abysmal, 1.3 months of inventory for sale in the country. So we talked a lot about supply challenges, and I think that it's pretty clear as why we're having supply problems. Now we want to talk about demand. So this is number of births by year and generation. So every single generation, it shows the number of births, and no surprise that the baby boomers had 76 million people born in their generation, and you can see many years above 4 million people were born. What we saw in Gen X was actually a dip in number of births, and actually in 1973, I believe it was, that was when Roe v. Wade was passed. Right, so abortion became legalized. We actually saw a pretty decent dip in number of births, and surprisingly, 33 years old is when the average person buys their first home. That's the age of the average first-time home buyer. So 33 years later, after 1973 was 2006. So not only did we have challenging lending problems, and anybody and their mother could get a loan if they could fog a mirror, but we had probably we're looking at maybe 3 million people for quite a few years, right, that were born as opposed to 4 million. So we're talking about millions and millions and millions of people who were not even around to buy homes, which also created a challenge because we had an oversupply. So, and then we see the millennial generation, which is the second biggest population, right? We saw it back up to 4 million. Average 33-year-old is hitting that number really, last year and moving forward. So we're going to see a demographic shift where we just have a massive number of first-time home buyers, move-up home buyers, and then the post-millennial generation is going to be even larger. A lot of people don't talk about that, but there's even more births happening there. So we still have more and more people vying for less and less homes.
Ryan, this is one of my favorite slides because what it communicates is that this is something that is sustainable over the coming years. So most of the families that we're helping, they have, especially if you're talking about first-time home buyers, they tend to be, the most nervous. I mean, everybody's still, keeping their eyes open for market shifts, but, they're saying, well, what happens? I'm looking to buy a house. I'm probably going to stay into it for 5 to 7 years. Well, if we look at this data, what this says is not only is the future sustainable from a standpoint of demand, it actually increases. So 2022, 2023, 2024, based on this, unless home builders get their act together, the inventory will actually be worse, meaning, the macroeconomic picture means that the home they're buying today will be worth more next year, worth more the year after that. So that fear of, people are, when I talk to clients and they're talking about being in a bubble, what they're really saying is, I don't want to be an idiot, right? I don't want to be the guy talking about, how he bought his first home in 2006. Around the barbecue with my brother-in-law and him secretly making fun of me. Well, what they can see from this is that that's not going to be the case for them. Now, we can't guarantee the market is going to go up, but this is about as close to a guarantee as you can get, because the supply and demand curve does not lie, right? If there's less of something than the population of people that want to buy it, the price will go up.
Yeah, one thing really well said, Danny. One thing Mark just put in the chat as well is people are living a lot longer, right? Average age has gone up to 78 years old, whereas previously we were in the 60s. So people just aren't dying, which means that homes aren't going to be sold in any sort of considerate way. Next, we're going to get into historic data from mortgage credit availability. Any of us that were in the mortgage business in 2005 knows that if you had a heartbeat and a social security number, sometimes not even that, you could get a mortgage. So mortgage credit availability spiked like crazy from 2004 to 2007. And then everyone realized, wow, that's a bad idea. And it shrank to almost, all-time challenging lows. Now we saw it improve a little bit, and then COVID hit and it got worse. And now we're just trending really kind of along the bottom here. So it's harder to qualify for a mortgage, meaning less people have the ability to buy. But for those who can, if they want to really take advantage of the market. Next is going to be default risk in the mortgage market. So one is product risk and the other is borrower risk. So product risk were your NAGAM loans, your 2-year ARMs with 3-year prepays, your interest-only loans, your zero down loans, really risky type products. Plus we had a a lower credit standard back there. As you can see, product risk is almost negligible. Pretty much every loan is chocolate or vanilla, 30-year fixed, 15-year fixed. People are putting money down. They have to qualify. We ask for their 4th grade report card to underwrite the loan. So there's very little product risk and very little actual borrower risk that are involved, which just means we're not going to see the defaults, meaning we're not going to see homes come on in foreclosure. We're not going to see massive short sales. We're going to see people sustain home affordability and home ownership in general. Next is year-over-year change in home equity. Again, another reason why we're not going to see any sort of defaults or foreclosures is because just in the last year, if you owned a home, on average, you made $26,300. If you lived in California, you made $55,000. So find your state, and you likely made money by simply owning a home, which means that people have the equity necessary to sustain, and if for some reason they lose their job or something terrible happens, they don't need a short sale, they don't need a foreclose, they just sell it normally, and there's an army of people willing to buy it. So this is the data, right? This is what we want to show our clients to be able to help them understand your feeling, although again, feels like 2007 is not something you should base your decisions on. You want to base it off of logic. And the data shows that it's still a really, really great time to buy a home because the trend is continuing to climb up. We don't see anything that could even remotely start to pull it backwards. So then we want to get into the psychology of the buyer situation. Again, I said it earlier, people know what they can do by clicking a button and getting pre-approved on the internet. They know what they can do by, a bad loan officer saying, fill out the application online, send me your documents, here's your pre-approval, without any sort of education or analysis. I said a lender's job is not to pre-approve a client and close the loan. Our job is to remove fear and uncertainty and replace it with education, confidence, and motivation. That's what a really strong, valuable mortgage professional does. Not just pre-approve someone and close the loan. So how do we do that? Step one, don't let the buyer compare apples to oranges. What I mean by that is people are constantly comparing what they pay today in rent versus their new potential housing payment, which is a massive miss. So not only are they frustrated and nervous and afraid because the market's going straight up and they can't get offers accepted, but they're also really concerned about paying way more than they're paying for rent and how that's going to challenge them long term. Well, if they compared 2,500 versus their new housing payment, then yes, that would be a problem. But you want to take your clients through a process where we say, look, Mr. Smith, if you don't buy a home today, which is a real possibility and one we want to account for, could you happily and comfortably live in your current rental for the next 5+ years? 95% of the time, he's going to say no, which is why he's talking to you right now. He wants to move. So if you didn't buy a home, then what would you pay to rent your new home? Oftentimes I get the number, maybe $500 more, extra bedroom, bathroom, more square footage. Okay, so now we're at 3,000, right? We're at this number. But then how much would rent go up per year? Most of the time, for some reason, people always say $100 a year. I actually will Google that right there with them, and I'll say, look, how much rental price is going to go up in Orange County? This is what comes up. And in 2020, it was 2010, 2021, 2050. All right, 4,020 to 4,250. I did the math. This is a 7% jump. This is a 5% jump. So if we just use a 5% number, that means it's going to go up $150 per year on that 3,000. That means that in 5 years, they'd be paying $3,750. And if we average that, they'd be paying $3,375. This is the number that people should be comparing versus their new house, not this number. because they don't want to live here and they're not going to live here. So why would you compare where you're not going to live versus where you want to live? Shouldn't you compare where you would alternatively live if you didn't buy a home versus buying a home? But people aren't going to take that step. They're not educated to do that. So we need to help them. So now we're going to take this number, this 3375 number, and look, if they buy a $700,000 condo and they put 5% down with taxes, insurance, and mortgage insurance bought into the loan here, and HOAs, they'd have a payment of $39.35. That's $1,500 more than they're paying right now. Is anyone excited about doing that? No. So they start telling their agent, oh, I'm not sure if it's the right time. Maybe I'm going to save for more money. Maybe I'll just rent for another year. And I'm going to, there's nothing in my price range. They know they can buy this because they have a piece of paper that says pre-approved that allows them to buy it. They just have no idea in God's green earth why they actually should do it, because they're already afraid of the market. Now that payment shows up. So most lenders actually scare their clients when they give them a pre-approval. They don't actually do the job they're supposed to do. So this is why, again, you're going to hear emotional reasons why people don't want to buy a home versus logical reasons. So then again, if they don't buy a home, what they say for their current rental, what would they pay to rent the new place? How much would rent go up each year? So we want to then show them the differences that aren't obvious to them, right? Side by side to show principal reduction and tax benefits. So I'm going to say, look, Joe, Mr. Prospective Homeowner, if you end up paying $33.75, which is the number that we got to together over the next 5 years on average, none of that money comes back to you and there's no tax benefits. However, if you buy a house, you get approximately about a $270 tax benefit based upon your tax bracket and writing off some of the interest in the property taxes. And then you save another $1,093 because that is money that's actually coming back to you, right? That's pushing down your principal, and it's a forced savings account. So your payment, after the net tax difference is only about $291 difference. And then when you factor that into the equation, it's about $1,100. So you're about a $800 positive by buying this home. Now, if you've ever asked someone what they're going to pay for rent over 5 years, they won't know. And the reason why is because no one ever wanted to do that math. It's terrifying. So we show them. So Joe, on average, you'd pay $202,500 over the next 5 years, and you'd give that to someone else. You'd have zero tax savings and zero equity. Alternatively, if you buy a home and we just get a 4% price growth, we're expected to see 9%. And you can actually go show them that on MBS IOA or any other statistic. If we just get a 4% price growth over the next 5 years, your home's going to grow to that $700,000 house grows to be worth about $854. You pay the mortgage down to $593. You have $260,000 in equity versus zero, all while paying about maybe $290 more per month. So, Mr. Realtor, the same client who was pre-approved by Quicken or some online company or some call center goes from being afraid of buying a house because of the payment to meeting with us and realizing it's financially irresponsible not to do that. If that psychology is not done, we're actually going to do more harm for people than help them, because we're going to allow them to make emotional decisions that aren't in their best financial interest. So not only do we need to show them the data of what's happening with the housing market and that it's sustaining and growing, we then need to work with their own personal economy and make sure they understand that. The next is the appraisal gap strategy. So this is the third component of it. Everybody understands we're having troubles and challenges with appraisals, right? Homes are selling for $800, but appraising at $725. And two things need to happen there. One, you need to set previous or prior expectations with the client that may happen, and we need to work them through the numbers so they're prepared for it and they understand how to overcome it. That's first and foremost. And then secondly, we need to be able to explain that strategy to the listing agent so they accept our offer. Because we're going to have an appraisal contingency, and they're going to say, well, we don't want appraisal contingency. We say, look, it's okay, because we've already done the work, that even if it comes in at 10% below market value, we still are approved. The client still knows it. They don't have to bring in any extra money. And here's how we've done it. And you attach that appraisal gap strategy difference, which I'll show you here in a second, to your pre-approval letter. Call the listing agent, send them a video. And not only does the client feel great, the buyer's agent loves it. So the listing agent feels a lot better accepting that offer, because they know it's okay. If it comes in 10% low, we've already done the homework. Buyer's already aware of it. It's pretty good, right? At that point, it makes the appraisal somewhat of a moot point. So you want to talk with not only the agents, but the client about this. So this is what we go over with the client, right? The most weighted indicator of value is what a willing buyer and a willing seller agree the price is in an open market with ample marketing time. Essentially, it's worth what someone will pay for it, right? In short. So why are appraisals coming in low? It's because of the speed that things are appreciating leaves no data to support the price. It's all happening too fast, right? There's a home that's on the market for 800,000, but no other homes in their neighborhood have sold because there's just no inventory. So they have to go back 6 months or a year to find a comparable sale. Well, the market's changed drastically. We've gone up 1% per month. So we're 6% higher, but they really can't factor that into the equation. So we educate the client on the difference between market value and comparable value, making sure they're aware of that so they're not concerned that they're overpaying for a house. And then we show them a solution, right, which is our appraisal gap strategy and how we can actually remove the appraisal contingency up front. So here's an example of it. This is the mortgage coach kind of total cost analysis here, where normal financing on $800,000 house, 20% down. And then you have, if that home comes in at $725,000. So essentially what we do here is we flip the extra 10% towards the difference. We move it to a lender paid mortgage insurance or a upfront mortgage insurance buyout. And the interest rate can stay the same because the mortgage insurance offsets it. And again, this is, you go a little bit more into detail on this, but my hope is that you guys understand this part. If not, we can always talk about it later. But essentially the payment is about $16 difference and the cash to close is actually lower. So the client is totally fine because all we've done is we've just readjusted the numbers to make it a 10% down, 90% loan with an upfront mortgage insurance buyout, as opposed to having to do a full 20% down. And then we want to show the math, because if you tell that to a group of people watching, they'll just be like, I don't understand how that happens. Like, where's the money go? So this is the actual kind of no cash difference that shows, okay, well, you only have to put 10% down of this number. You have similar loan amounts, closing costs, you have the prepaid tax and insurance, the mortgage insurance premium buyout here. You have the gap between the purchase price and appraisal, points or lender credit. So we're lender crediting a little bit to offset the delta there. And you can see the total cash to close, keeping it at 89%. So payment ends up being almost exactly the same, within $18. Next thing, on a $1.5 million purchase, same thing, comes in at 1.35. Same thing applies, right? We just go to a 90%. Obviously the rate goes up, which means the payment goes up. But in this case, we can just tell the client, look, we're seeing 1% price improvements, month over month. You saw the data that we've shown you that indicates that's not stopping anytime soon. So yeah, you may have to, pay a little bit higher interest rate for the next 9 to 12 months, but 6 months from now, we're going to be calling and analyzing and figuring out, okay, how can we bring this back down? Where's the loan to value? As soon as we get that 20%, it's likely we can bring this down. And if the economists are right and we see some sort of a recession or pullback in 2023, your rate will go even lower than where it would have started today. So clients like, yeah, just get me in the house. I'll deal with the rest of it later. And then we're able to show them the appraisal gap strategy. Same thing, just go through all the numbers here. Next is going to be fully underwritten approval, which is, I think is really a requirement in today's market. I tell all my team, if you have a client out there with a pre-approval letter, it's almost like, you have a family in this little glass jar that you're just laughing at, and kind of, Truman show, where you're just like, oh, look at them, it's cute, they have a pre-approval letter. Pre-approval letters just aren't going to cut it in this day and age. So, we really believe that every loan should be fully underwritten. It was funny, I was presenting to a group of agents the other day, and they said, yeah, no, we totally ask that for every time. We ask them for the DU approval. And I said, oh, okay, well, obviously you're not aware of what a DU approval is. I said, a DU approval is just the numbers we put in to get the pre-approval. I can DU approve my 6-year-old. So don't ask for that, right? You don't want to ask for the automated underwriting analysis. You want to ask for the approval where an actual underwriter has looked at the credit, the income, and the assets, and has basically given a conditional loan approval. As long as nothing changes, that loan is going to close as long as the collateral and title come in. And they had no clue. They're like, oh, we thought a DU approval was a full loan approval. It's not. It's just math. And sometimes, most of the time, it can be incorrect. So what we require from the client in order to have them do that, it costs about $750 in time, in bonus, in pay, in man hours to actually fully underwrite someone's loan. We did the math the other day. So we're not just going to be fully underwriting every single person that we come across. We want to make sure that they conform to three things or agree to three things that we're asking of them. One, they're going to actually make offers in the next 60 days. Two, they're ready to provide all documentation. And three, as long as you know and believe and are committed to us as we're the right lending team, then we'll go ahead and get you that golden ticket to help you go buy your new home. Which is hugely beneficial because, again, makes them look like an all cash offer. We can remove contingencies. We can, put the appraisal gap strategy in place. They already know what's happening with the market, so they're confident there. Psychologically, we walk them through why it's a great idea to buy a home for their own personal economy. We showed them appraisal gap strategy in case anything comes in low. So we really have, as bulletproof of a buyer as you could possibly get at that point.
Hey, Ryan, talk about from the psychology standpoint, when you go to that commitment or that agreement right there, I see a lot of loan officers that question, is it okay if I ask for that agreement? Is it okay if I ask for that commitment? It's absolutely not only okay, you should be doing this. It's not just the time. It's like, you want to make sure that this is somebody that's committed to not only not wasting your agent's time, but not wasting you and your team's time. And so you've provided so much value at this point. And you will be able to tell, is this the kind of client that sees that value or not? So this will be your vetting out process. So you and your team don't spend time on those clients that are just predispositioned that no matter how much value you give them, they're not going to be loyal. And so this should absolutely be part of your process. Don't have fear around asking these questions. You need to get in front of them.
Yeah, we don't get to have someone sign a buyer broker agreement like real estate agents do. And even though not a lot of them do it, they still could, right? They could say, yes, I'd be happy to represent you. I'd be happy to go show you homes. The sign here basically states that if you buy a home within X number of months, and I'm the representation, that I'm owed the commission. We can't do that, but we can look them right in the face and say, we're going to do a ton of work for you. We're going to help you get your offer accepted. We're going to help you become a successful homeowner. We're going to, put time, money, and effort into helping you up front. I just want to make sure you're committed. And so it's not going to be 100%. Right? You're still going to get people that go into contract and shop a little bit, but at least they'll tell you, and you can be closer, right? Like, they're not just going to ghost you and be like, oh, use somebody else, because you've expressed to them what you're doing, how valuable what you're doing is, and you've gotten their commitment. So it's as close as you're going to get to having them sign something in our world. All right, and next is what I believe is going to move the real estate market as much as it possibly can. So we partner with a company, our company's partnered with another company, but this company works with other lenders and other real estate agents, a company called Revive. And they're a third-party financing company that helps people maximize the sale of their departing residence. And it also helps people move from one home to the next without being stuck. So first thing they do from a home concierge perspective is somebody walks into, real estate agent walks into a house. It quite obviously is dated, needs work, cat pee on the rug, cabinets falling apart. They probably could list it just fine and sell it easy, right? But they're definitely not going to maximize the price. So an agent can come in and say, hey, Mr. Smith, if we put about 10 to 20 grand of work into this, we could probably get 40 to 50 grand additional profit because we're bringing it up to kind of industry standard. Most of the time, Mr. Smith's not going to have that 10 to 20 grand or just not going to want to access it. So we can now help him finance those renovations prior to selling his home with no cost to him, right? The financing company charges the contractor, pays them the finder's fee. So they do the work, they pay for the work, the home is listed, and then when it sells, everybody's paid through proceeds and paid through escrow. And yes, the seller ends up paying that 10 or 20 grand back, but they make 40 to 50 more. So they have a net 30,000-ish profit, whereas they would not have had the ability to do that before. So you can really help people, homeowners who are now home buyers, really move in the most appropriate way and maximize their opportunity. And then the one that we're using a lot right now is the trade up program. So let's say Danny is in a $500,000 house. He wants to buy a $700,000 house. We've pre-approved him. We've looked at cross collateralization. We've looked at bridge loans. We've looked at qualifying for both properties. Just nothing works. He's got to sell his current place in order to buy the new one. Well, good luck getting a contingent offer accepted right now. So what we do is we'll fully underwrite Danny's loan in advance for more than 700 for as much as we can. Let's just say he maxes at 750. We're going to estimate a conservative amount of proceeds from the sale of his departing residence, and we're going to fully underwrite his loan as if he's going to buy that $700,000 home. So that way, when that $700,000 house comes on the market, Danny can say that one, and the financing company will just go write an all cash offer, close it within 15 days, all cash. Has a much higher likelihood of getting that offer accepted and getting it accepted at a better price. Without being all cash, you're going to have to bid up over other people, right? So you're going to save a little bit of money on that purchase price because you're not going to have to overbid because you have a 30-day close and you need a loan approval and all those things. So what happens is, as soon as that offer gets accepted, Danny would sign a purchase contract from them and a lease agreement. He'll then have, when that home closes, he can move into that new home. He now has 6 to 12 months to sell his departing residence, and they'll renovate his departing residence to get the maximum price out of it. He sells and then completes the transaction, buys it from them. So it's an easy way for people to help move this market, right? To open up inventory where there was no inventory prior, because Danny wouldn't have listed his home and sold it without knowing where he's going to go. I mean, there's very little inventory, and when it comes up, it's not even guaranteed that he'd get the house. So we have to have a strategy to be able to do this. This is a great company that we've enjoyed partnering with that helps with that. So now, we would tell the agents, hey, congrats, your buyers just became significantly more competitive. They can confidently offer confidently up to the max purchase price and compete with cash. They can remove loan contingencies. They can have an informed strategy around low appraisal, and then we'll send a video to the listing agent upon the presentation. One thing I want to play for you is, we call it game film. And Mark did a presentation to a group of real estate agents. So let me play this for you so you can understand the power of it. Just want to make sure if someone can just say, yes, I can hear this.
And I heard you talk, and I
Yes.
wanted to understand what you have to offer.
Can you guys hear it?
It sounds amazing.
Yes.
Because we do need to come in with no appraisal, and yet you've covered that difference beautifully, and I just want to be able to understand it, because I do have, we all have a need for it. So you're the only one that I know that has actually come up with a solution to help these people out, instead of, the family having to kick in $50,000 out of their savings, and et cetera, et cetera. So I look forward to understanding it. Thank you so much.
All right. So pretty powerful stuff, right? I mean, not every day you hear an agent say, this is a massive problem, and you're the only person I've ever heard that has a solution to this problem. And then she goes and tells 15 other agents that she met a lender who solved the biggest problem that every real estate agent that she knows has. So I can't stress that, how important it is to go do this presentation for your agents, whether it's via Zoom, whether it's, getting people into your office, whether it's going to theirs. People need to know this exists because they don't today.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's super important, right? Like, our commitment is to our clients and to educate them and to address the emotional fear and pain that they have. But the byproduct of this, and where we really, really need to leverage this, is with our agents, because the pain point for them, I mean, again, Ryan hit on it, that appraisal issue right now is going to become more and more and more apparent. I mean, we're going to be dealing with it. The best way to do it is up front. In addition to that, these buyers that are not emotionally prepared, all of a sudden you start going through this presentation here, and you literally are going to hit on every single pain point that they're feeling right now. And so we, again, want to equip you guys with not only the kind of the mindset and the education around it, but we want to give you something tangible that you can take. So I think Danny put the comment in the section a little bit earlier that we have a Triibe branded deck of this that will load to the ELP that you guys can pull down, rebrand with your own company and your own team information. And then I would love, Ryan, I think you're going to do a presentation on this a little bit later. How do you feel about, recording and maybe putting the game film from that actual agent presentation up? So if somebody wants to go and watch, like, hey, I know that we did a little bit of a variation of it, but what does it feel like if I'm presenting to agents? Are you comfortable doing that?
Yep, we already got the videographer and everything all set up. Plus, we're going live, so if anybody wants to watch it live, you can do that as well.
Cool.
So now we'd like to pivot over to questions and any areas that we can kind of drill down on. And one of the first questions, I know, Mark, thank you for kind of putting a note in there. But David, I want to touch on, maybe an expanded answer to your question about the appraisal gap strategy for people that are putting 5% down. So I believe the important thing here is really setting expectations. We know that there's an increased likelihood of a low appraisal relative to really any other point that I've seen in the mortgage market or the housing market. So preparing that buyer, whether they're putting 5% down, 3.5% down, whatever it is, before that happens, because we want to just know what the strategy is going to be. It could be that the conclusion of the appraisal gap strategy is we're out, right? That house is just not going to be the solution for us, but make that determination up front where it's tactical, the event hasn't happened yet, and you can actually have a calm conversation about it in theory, instead of in the midst of it and all the emotions kind of welled up, because there are other solutions potentially. I mean, that agent touched on one of them on the call, right? Family help, right? Maybe the solution is a gift letter. Maybe the solution is a 401k loan or a margin loan against assets. It could be that they're putting 5% down, but they're capable of putting 10% down. They have the money, they're just wisely choosing not to use it because they're using the leverage of low interest rates to build wealth in real estate faster. So the question that you're answering in the appraisal gap strategy is, what are we going to do if this happens? And, big gap, medium gap, small gap, what are our solutions? And you're having that conversation before the event happens. And it's okay if the conclusion is, we're just going to have to move on to the next one, get a new appraisal, because they don't have any other weapons that they can deploy to get themselves bridged across, the actual gap that happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well said. What are the questions you guys have? Maybe not, it doesn't have to just be about like the content, but maybe strategy around how you can get this out in front of the most people possible and become known as the brightest lender in your market.
Hey, it's something I've had a tremendous amount of success with. Presentation obviously to the buyer. This is great. It's helped me and my team convert people that were on the fence, but we were still finding difficult to get our offers accepted, as I can imagine a lot of folks are in this market. We'd call the listing agent, go through our normal spiel, and we'd still either take a backup position or just be back in market. So something that I've recently started doing within the last 2 weeks was in my phone call to the listing agent when the offer's been presented, I've taken a few slides from the realtor presentation, the solution slide, and then the 2 appraisal gap strategy slides, and have just reached out to the listing agent and said, hey, I get it. You're getting inundated by calls. Majority of the buyers have removed their appraisal contingency, but let me tell you why we're different and what we've done with the buyer to ensure that in the event that there is an appraisal deficit, my buyer's committed to move forward because we've already touched on this. And this past weekend, we've sent out 9 pre-approval letters, and historically it's been, maybe 1 or 2 will pop. We took down 6 contracts this past weekend due to this conversation. So it's, a true call to action. Buyers loved it, but now the response from the listing side, it's holy crap. They actually are delivering on what they're doing. It's been monumental, and this is something I'm going to be doing, refine it a little more, but a tremendous amount of success with it.
Well said, man. That's awesome. And I think another thing on that also, right, just the subject line of your email, like we have the solution for your problem or something like that. Like be creative, that way it catches their attention. But then if you can get on the phone with them, one of the best things to do is just ask, what's the most important thing to the seller? Because sometimes it's speed, sometimes it's not. Sometimes speed actually scares them. Like agents will be like, well, we don't want to close in 15 days. So that's not important. It's like, okay, well, what if we close in 15 days and then let you rent back for 45? Like, would that be helpful? Right? Or what if we were able to close quickly, but then we, helped you with, repairs or whatever it is, right? Whatever the hot button is for that seller. Now, if it's just the highest price, well, you're kind of up the creek at that point, right? And then you just have to, make sure your client's on board and kind of explain if they want it, they kind of have to pay for it because there's nothing else that the seller really wants or needs. But the impetus for like accepting offers is not always the highest price. It's not always the fastest close. Sometimes there's other things that are in consideration. And rent backs are hugely important just because it gives people time and space to do what they need to do. Sometimes maybe it's a seller contingency, right? Maybe the agent doesn't even know what a seller contingency is, right? So explaining to them, hey, if you want to throw a seller contingency on here, we're okay with that. What is that? Okay, well, let me talk to you about it.
So team, I want to add one other tactic here that I'm, I think is really in alignment with our teaching. So one of the 23 areas of life and business the tribe really focuses on is knowing your numbers, like really understanding the metrics of your business. And one, if you're not tracking this number today, please start tracking the frequency of your offer acceptance. How often you're getting your offers accepted relative to your competition. Because if you're one of 20 people, all things being equal, you'd expect a 5% conversion, right? 1 in 20 times you'll get your client's offer accepted. But if you can show that through the strategies you implement, that they're 78% likely, 65% likely, right? Dramatic difference over what you would consider to be an average. Not only does that give you credibility, but it also sets the expectation that, look, this isn't 100%, right? Be emotionally prepared to maybe this not being your forever home or the one that you're going to get into. There is, it's not 100, but it's definitely higher than anybody else that you might be working with or thinking of working with.
And to that point, we actually had a flyer that we created because we did exactly what Danny said and we tracked those numbers. We were at a 72% offer acceptance rate. And in 2018, any home that had a $700,000 purchase price or below had an average of 6 offers in Orange County. So we were able to tell clients a normal offer acceptance rate in Orange County is 16.6%, right? Because 6 offers, 1 person's getting the offer accepted. Our offer acceptance rate 72%, and this is why. So if you're wondering why you should work with us versus anybody else, there's about a 54% delta that you're going to have to contend with if you work with someone else.
Hey, Ryan, mind if I jump in here?
Please.
So kind of like Eric, just to piggyback off him, I'm using a similar strategy to get the offers accepted. Basically, the way I'm doing it, just as a quick blueprint, is I'm teeing up my agent partners to kind of talk about it when they reach out to the other side of the agent. And I'm also putting it on my approval letter or pre-approval letter, depending on what the buyer is. I put it right on the front, big letters, appraisal, gap, strategy included on here. And then when my agents tee it up, it's always the same response. Like, what do you mean? What does that mean? Oh, you know what? Let me have my lender talk to you about it. And then we set up a time, have a conversation with the seller. It becomes an opportunity to tell the seller how great my process is, how great my team is, how great my buyer is, how amazing my strategy is. And then it just kind of takes the focus out of all the other offers just into my buyer. And it pretty much kind of sets me up for success and my clients. And so that's kind of how I do it. Some of the people were asking me about it. But that's a just quick snippet of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, Bertha, that's great. One of the things that I would go and add on to that, and it's probably the direction you're going, is the why behind it. I think if you talk through, hey, we take the time to really educate our buyers. And I know that you are dealing with so many emotional buyers and you're trying to decide, is this going to be one of those buyers that if we get in an appraisal issue or an inspection issue or something else comes up, are they prepared for it? And so I think if you can hit head on, we understand the emotional and the psychological buying process here and what our clients go through. And our goal and our job is to spend time with them to get them to strategically be prepared to approach this market. And you go into those things right there. And if I'm a listing agent, I hear that that's the buyer that I want right there. That's the person I want to work with that's prepared for if scenario A happens, B happens, C happens. We're not going to deviate from closing this loan and closing on this home in 15 to 30 days.
Yeah, to add that, Chris, that's a great point. So that's part of my conversation when I do that call. It's like, hey, in reality, let's be real here. You're protecting your seller. You're trying to make the best advice for your client. You want to close the escrow. And in this market, you know how crazy these escrows are, and then so on. But I bring that to light in that conversation, which I think it's awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, well done, man.
Just to be super respectful of everybody's time, we do want to end on time today. David, thanks for that question about kind of unemployment. And I think I'll just give you a brief answer. And if there's somebody that wants to answer more thoroughly, maybe we can kind of post it in the Facebook group or something along those lines. But, I believe that people coming off unemployment benefits is actually going to make the situation worse because it's just going to be more qualified buyers in the market. And, that's going to affect supply demand with no real supply coming online. anytime soon. The question that was asked earlier about lead time on houses, I mean, from initial permitting to, keys in hands, usually about a 3-year cycle. So even, with the lack of activity on the builder side, they're ramping up for sure. But, those buyers are going to come back to the market faster than houses come to the market. We want to thank everybody sincerely from the bottom of our heart for being here today. We are so appreciative of everybody who is part of the tribe. We are so excited to be building this community with amazing people like